It's Thursday night. You know, that's what that means. It's time for the MMA Strategy Show right here at Awesemo.com as we are here to break down UFC 258, which, of course, is on Saturday night inside the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. Of course, there on the right-hand side of the screen, you see your friend, my friend, the fighter, Pete Rogers Jr. Pete, how you doing here on this Thursday evening? Just 48 hours away from, live fights.
Yeah, what's going on? What's going on, everybody? Thanks for joining us. We have a pay-per-view card with a fight night feel to it. But, I am excited for some of the fights. We do have some ugly matchups, and we do, there are some low-level fights, in my opinion. But, some good fighters to target for DFS.
God, I felt like on my podcast this week, I was being a little negative Nancy in terms of the quality of this card. So I'm just glad you said it and I didn't say it because premium main event, no question. Great main event. The rest of this card, you know what this card needed? Corey Sandhagen versus Frankie Edgar.
Yeah, I agree. I think if they pushed that back, it would have made a lot of sense. I mean, not too often do you see me question about purchasing a pay-per-view. And, I'm pinching pennies over here and I'm like, maybe I won't get the pay-per-view. I don't know. It'll be quite a feat if I do not get the pay-per-view because I'm such a big fight fan. But I'll probably end up getting it and then, they'll laugh to the bank.
That thought has crossed my mind.
Yeah. I know.
Like, I literally go, man, the main event's a great main event. And I mean, look, I think that Patolo and Marquez is going to be a fun fight as long as it does last. But man, it's just it's a pay-per-view that to me it's missing that counter punch of a fight. Like you think back to last month, you had the Chandler debut. It had that counter punch to the main event. So we look forward to we'll see how these fights go. Of course, we're going to break down all these fights throughout the next 50 minutes or so as we lead you up to the NBA late slate live before lock show. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button right here on YouTube. Of course, if you're not subscribed to Awesemo, you got to hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live on the channel. And got a little notification right before the show, Pete. MMA projections are free all week this week over at Awesemo.com, so you got to check out that. And, of course, while you're there, you got to check out all Pete's great content he's got up there as well, particularly Takedown City, which I know someone's already asked a question about who is going to Takedown City. But let's get right into this, Pete. The main event, Kamaru Usman defending the welterweight title against Gilbert Burns. Of course, these two guys used to be teammates at one point down there at Sanford MMA. They were supposed to fight back in July of last year. Gilbert Burns, you look at the beginning half of last year, he was well on his way to potentially being the fighter of the year. You look at how he started off his 2020. Of course, the injury ultimately did not allow him to compete there in July. So the fight is here. So, Pete, let's get your analysis on this one.
Yeah, I'm excited for the main event. I really am. Anytime you have two guys that know each other so well, it makes for a very exciting fight. But also sometimes, it depends on how friendly they are. And I think that, Kamaru Usman is a very hungry guy and wants to maintain being a champion. And I think that since a belt is on the line, it makes things a little bit more intense. Whereas like if you have, friends fighting that's not for a belt, sometimes you can get caught up in a playful sparring match. And we have seen, somebody to think of like Cowboy Cerrone in a couple fights, just being a little too playful. But in this fight, you have Kamaru Usman, who is like the king of pace. He has an incredible pace. I'll say that he's an okay striker, but I know that he has been working with Trevor Whitman a lot and has really refined his striking. And Whitman has some of the best boxing, training and best boxing advice out there. So I'm really excited to see, Kamaru Usman with a full camp and a second camp with Trevor Whitman here. But I mean, the tail of the tape is really about Kamaru Usman's wrestling. That's what he does. He grinds you against the cage, and then he takes you down relentless pace, throws tons of ground strikes. But Gilbert Burns is a dangerous guy, and, he knows what Kamaru Usman's plan is going to be. Can he stop the takedowns? I think he can stop some. I don't know if he can stop all of them. I mean, you're talking about a 5-round fight, trying to avoid being on your back with Kamaru Usman for 25 minutes. The likelihood is you're going to be on your back. So I think that, Burns needs to try to get back to his feet quickly and not try to play jiu-jitsu off of his back too much, because I think he'll end up getting beaten up from the bottom. It's an exciting fight. I think that Burns definitely has the power edge over Kamaru Usman, but I think that Usman striking and just the pace of everything, it's going to be an exciting fight.
6 straight main event for Kamaru Usman. When you look at this, 6 in the last 5 round fights he's gone all 25 minutes in every single one of those fights. I think that's something to take in here. I did want to ask you a question about these two guys being training partners, because obviously you're the fighter, you'll have direct, you have knowledge of this. When two guys who have trained together before, and I was thinking about this more from a Gilbert Burns aspect of Usman likely knows all the tricks that Gilbert Burns want to go on the ground. What's he like to go to where it's a triangle choke, a rear naked choke, whatever the submission attempt may be. How much does that favor Kamaru Usman, that he basically knows a majority of all the traps that Gilbert Burns may like to put in to eventually get a submission?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting because I know that Gilbert Burns really is like a jiu-jitsu mind over there at Sanford MMA, and a lot of the fighters there rely on the Burns brothers to help them with their jiu-jitsu. I can say it works both ways though. You can't say it helps Kamaru and doesn't help Gilbert. I think it works both ways. I'm sure that they both have some tricks up their sleeves. As far as the number one submission, say Gilbert Burns has an amazing triangle, but Kamaru Usman is going to be aware of that and going to look to avoid that at all costs. But if a guy's really good at a technique, he has tons of ways to set it up, tons of ways to trap you that he hasn't even showed you. I'm excited for the fight, and I think that from a stylistic point of view, and if you look at their entire body of work, you will say that Kamaru Usman probably has fought the tougher competition. And the more notable names, until recently, you have Gilbert Burns taking out Damian Maia, and then Tyron Woodley was kind of like where he exploded onto the scene, and that momentum was so amazing. And a lot of people were calling for immediate title shot and thinking that he's going to be the guy to take out Kamaru Usman. He very well could be. I think that they both have improved since the last time they've trained with one another, but it's a different thing when you're training with somebody and then it's under the lights. I mean, there are plenty of people that you completely destroy in the gym, but it all matters about that night, come fight night under the lights. And when you're not really having to pull punches and you're not having to baby each other, and you're, Kamaru Usman absolutely dominated all the wrestling scrambles against Gilbert Burns. I can guarantee you that. But now you add ground and pound, heavy ground and pound into that. Now you really have to think about how that's going to, play out in the fight.
Looking at the DFS salaries in terms of this one, so over on DraftKings, $9,000 for Usman, $7,200 for Burns. FanDuel, $21 for Usman, $18 for Burns. And over on Super Draft, the multiplier on Kamaru Usman, 1.05 times and 1.6 times for Burns. Let's just say you're playing in a 20 max, whether it's DraftKings, whether it's FanDuel, whatever. How much of shares of this fight do you need to have?
I think I'm going to, have 100% shares. That's just me. I'm an aggressive DFS player. I like to make stands because, more often than not, I'm correct, especially in this sport. And then me having more possibilities and more lineups with fighters that I think are pivotal to taking down an optimal. I think that you need the main event. I mean, you got the king of pace in Kamaru Usman, and then Gilbert Burns, his finishing ability, whether it's via striking or via submission. I think that at his price point, it makes both guys. I thought Kamaru Usman's salary is going to be extremely high, and I thought Burns was going to be even lower. I'm happy with both of their salaries. So I will be targeting this fight 100% just because that's how I am. And, out of 10 contests, if I was just doing 10, I'd probably lean 8 of my contests will be Kamaru Usman. I am backing Kamaru Usman quite a bit here. I just think that he hasn't really shown any vulnerability in the cage. You can say that his striking defense sometimes, he's not an amazing striker, but that's why he went to Trevor Whitman to kind of refine that technique. The only worry of mine is maybe the level of training partners that Kamaru Usman has surrounding him now versus, Gilbert Burns being around the same team as Sanford MMA, and you've seen that gym kind of explode on the scene. So, that's my thoughts on it. I love Gilbert Burns as a punt play, though. I think that he's an amazing play.
I know when I was doing a crunch a little earlier today and putting in the projections and, then putting in. So, when I go into Fantasy Cruncher, here's what I do is I'll put in the projections and then I put in 20% randomness and I go 2 unique fighters per lineup. And I want to say Usman on DK was at about 69%.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think if you're not too comfortable with Usman, that's a fair percentage. And it allows you to get different with your lineups. I always say prioritize main event and co-main event underdogs. I think that they are some of the best, spots on the slate from an underdog standpoint. And I think that Gilbert Burns, if he cracks Kamaru Usman, he could definitely snatch up a neck or, it's an interesting fight. We'll have to see how it plays out.
Speaking of the underdog in the co-main event, that's going to be Maycee Barber. She's 7,900 on DK, taking on Alexa Grasso, who's 8,300. Pretty similar on FanDuel, $16 for Grasso, $15 for Barber. And then over on SuperDraft, 1.45 times for Maycee, 1.3 times for Alexa Grasso. And I was looking at betting line movements since the lines opened, and Maycee Barber, one of the most notable movements that we have seen. She opened plus 160. She's now plus 100. Pete, break down the fight for us.
Yeah, I mean, knee-jerk reaction. I'm thinking I really think Alexa Grasso can do a lot on the feet and maybe, outpoint her opponent here, because you just have that distant memory of the Roxanne Modafferi fight with Maycee Barber. But granted, she did injure her knee significantly in that bout. But prior to that, we can't ignore the fact that Roxanne Modafferi was landing some good combinations. She was definitely, hitting Maycee Barber quite a bit. And if Roxanne Modafferi is hitting Maycee Barber, you can bet that Alexa Grasso is going to hit you. Alexa Grasso has some really, really strong boxing. The one thing around Alexa Grasso is that she gets taken to the mat and held on her back quite a bit. And I think that Maycee Barber's ability to kind of dictate where the fight goes is why she's an appealing underdog here. 7,900. I think that, she's a co-main event underdog. I talk about it all the time. And there's a reason that a lot of money is coming in on her, because you can see that when her striking's not working, she can resort to the wrestling. And I can actually give you some insider info of who she's been working with. So she's been working with Israel Coach Izzy for her wrestling. And Coach Izzy has really helped out a lot of people. You think about Anthony Pettis, the Pettis brothers used to train with him a lot. In addition to that, she's been working with Mike Valley, who is a friend of mine. I've actually, cornered with him a little bit, cornered my friend Bobby Huron. But Maycee Barber is working with him, and Coach Mike Valley is really, really good. He's a high-level striking coach, and I think that he can really make Maycee Barber striking and take it to another level. And you actually saw it on the embeddeds that, they're working some nice hand combinations. She's always been an aggressive striker, definitely holds the finishing rate over here in this fight. Maycee Barber, 88% finish rate, whereas Alexa Grasso, 33% finish rate. My worry is that Alexa Grasso keeps it on the feet somehow and does kind of have, the cleaner boxing. And, maybe the ring rust is a factor here, Jason, but I like Maycee Barber here, 7,900. I just think that she has so many ways to win, has a slight advantage in the output, has an advantage in the finishing rate, and definitely has an advantage in the wrestling department.
Yeah, when I initially looked at the betting odds, or excuse me, the DraftKings odds, because when I looked initially, we didn't have FanDuel odds. FanDuel odds now have come out. I always I'm looking at the very top end. What are those top end salaries? And then I go right down to the under 8,000. And she was one of the fighters that really stuck out to me because, look, we have a very short-term memory in this sport. We remember the last thing we saw out of Maycee Barber. And the last thing we saw is, she hurts her knee, loses to Roxanne Modafferi. Was it so much about injuring herself in the fight, or was it just, hey, you took on a vet who's got a ton of experience, and you know what, you just couldn't, you didn't have it on that night. It's one of those fights that if this stays on the feet, Pete, with the DraftKings scoring system, because we were talking about this earlier this week, is the one thing that kind of hurts us as DFS players with the new DK scoring system is in the previous system you got 0.5 points for significant strikes. Well, now it's only 0.2 for significant strikes, 0.2 for total strikes. You just wish it was 0.25 for each to kind of balance things out a little bit. But could the winner of this fight be in the optimal lineup?
Yeah, I think the winner can, and I think the winner can because Alexa Grasso has good volume. She also has some decent jiu-jitsu as well. Like, she can scramble well and work towards some submissions. I think that if it stays on the feet, though, the likelihood of it being optimal is slim, unless somebody gets a finish, of course. And I would have to lean Maycee Barber in that instant. But I think that Maycee Barber is going to really, implement some takedowns, get some control time, some good top pressure, potentially work towards a TKO victory of trying to, elbow her from the top. She's done that to a lot of her opponents. She has some excellent ground and pound. It's just, are we banking too much on Maycee Barber to kind of come back off of an ACL injury and kind of just pick up where she left off against a tough fighter? Like, I don't want people to think that Alexa Grasso is a bad fighter, because she's not. She has good boxing and she's pretty good overall. She just gets taken down, a decent amount. And, she has really, really good boxing. She probably has the better technique of the two.
Of course, this is the MMA DFS strategy show right here on Awesemo.com. And of course, if you want to get access to all the great tools and content we have over Awesemo.com, you got to sign up for an Awesemo Plus weekly pass for $29.95. Gives you access to all our ownership projections, player projections, all the great tools that have made Alex Awesemo Baker the #1 DFS player in the world. These are the tools that he uses on the daily to put together all of his lineups. And we do have a great promo going over there right now with the Daytona 500 coming up this weekend. You can get half off Awesemo Plus NASCAR Pass weekly pass. That's $495 for a Awesemo NASCAR Plus weekly pass, $498 for everything you have to offer for the NASCAR Daytona 500 coming up this weekend on Sunday. By the way, I'll be hosting a strategy show on Saturday. That'll be at 12 p.m. And then coming up on Sunday, we'll have Live Before Lock, which I want to say is at 1:30. So you see it there right on the screen. Sign up right now. Get that Awesemo Plus NASCAR weekly pass for half off for $4.98. All you got to do is use that promo code Daytona. So I'll be busy here, grind here in the office this weekend between NASCAR and the UFC. Let's move on to the next matchup. We got a middleweight matchup of Kelvin Gastelum taking on Ian Heinisch. Kelvin Gastelum, 8,800 on DK, 7,400 on DraftKings. I know this is a fight that me and Pete were kind of talking a little bit about earlier this week, and I think this is also, Pete, another fight. You got to kind of take in the DK scoring system, particularly with what you probably likely expect from Kelvin Gastelum. But how do you see this fight going?
Yeah, I'm excited for this fight. I've been a Kelvin Gastelum fan for a while. It's actually my mom's favorite fighter next to me. She loves Kelvin Gastelum, and I like Kelvin a lot too. I think that he has some incredible wins in the UFC. And if you go back to the Ultimate Fighter, he's kind of always been like counted out and emerged as like a top talent. He has great boxing, good wrestling. But over the years, he started to rely on his hands instead of, going to that wrestling well. He overwhelms his opponents a lot. He's just in a rough patch right now, Jason. And, this rough patch, you wonder how it's going to affect him mentally. I listened to what he was saying on the Embedded series, and he was talking about how he was really doing a lot of work mentally. So it sounds like he hired like a, like a mental coach or something like that to kind of help him overcome this stuff. And I think that's smart, especially when you're at the top level. You want every advantage possible. So 8,800 for Kelvin Gastelum, 67% finish rate. It's kind of like low after what you think of, you think of Kelvin Gastelum just knocking people out and putting them away, but that's an okay finishing percentage. Ian Heinisch coming in 50% finish rate. So I understand what you're saying. It could be a lot of clinch work against the cage. Could be back and forth contest. Heinisch has been, kind of on the up, whereas Gastelum has been on the decline. I still can't get over, Kelvin Gastelum losing here. I just think that, his boxing is so crisp. I remember what Derek Brunson was doing to Ian Heinisch in several instances in that fight. I always say that lefties pose a big problem to righties because you're not able to find big lefties or lefties in general to emulate the sparring, and the angles are differently. You have to basically change your entire game plan to make sure you're not running into that left hand. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kelvin Gastelum knock him out here. I really wouldn't. It might be I must have forgot how good Kelvin Gastelum is. I'm not a big Ian Heinisch guy this week. Are you?
I want to potentially blow your mind away with a little stat here.
Okay, let's hear it.
I don't know if you realize this. So Kelvin Gastelum has 10 wins in the UFC.
Mm.
How many of those wins are against fighters who are still in the UFC?
Probably like 4.
Too high, bro.
Really?
Two. Uriah Hall and Jacare Souza.
Okay, well, Bisping retired, so yeah.
That's why I said they're still in the UFC.
Yeah. Okay.
His wins in the UFC: Uriah Hall, Brian Melanson, Rick Story, Nico Muskoki, Jake Ellenberger, who's retired, Nate Marquardt retired, Johnny Hendricks retired, Tim Kennedy retired, Bisping retired, Jacare Souza.
Yeah, I mean, the trend is that, Kelvin Gastelum's fighting these big names at the tail end of their careers or kind of when they are starting to falter a little bit, and it makes sense. And, I can't ignore what you just said. It is the truth. Heinisch is a hungry guy, and Heinisch always brings it each fight. So Kelvin definitely needs to go back to his roots, maybe mix in some takedowns, stay technical on the feet. But, if you think about that Israel Adesanya fight, Jason, I can't get over how competitive that fight was and how it was, narrowly even at, 2 apiece going into the 5th. So I think that Kelvin Gastelum's in a good spot here. I just hope that, the losses haven't really taken away that confidence.
Miles has a question about this fight. He says, how likely is it that Gastelum is optimal with the win?
Well, he would need a finish here. 8,800. I don't really both these guys have a wrestling background, so it may be some weird transitions or some weird scrambles. But they get taken down at a decent clip, but they have some horrible takedown accuracy. According to the sheet, 37% for Kelvin Gastelum, 19% for Ian Heinisch. So that could lead to a lot of sloppiness in the clinch against the cage. Granted, we are in the small cage at the apex, so clinching will be increased here. So that's something to take into consideration for each fight. That's why I like Kamaru Usman in the top out.
Let's move on to a lightweight matchup. Jim Miller versus Bobby Green. Jim Miller, 7,300. Bobby Green, 8,900 over on FanDuel. $20 for Bobby Green, $9 for Jim Miller. When I look at fighters under 8K, Jim Miller sticks out to me, Pete. I'm just going to say this right now. If you want to just make a 2 prop bets on this fight, go ahead and make the prop bet of Jim Miller wins by submission round 1. Because if Jim Miller wins by finish, it will be in round 1. Or take Jim Miller by split decision because Bobby Green does tend to lose split decisions.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. And I think that, an 8,900 price tag for Bobby Green, he has let us down in the past because he just plays around a little too much and he plays games. And it goes to show you that he really just enjoys himself out there. Instead of putting a stamp on wins, he allows his opponents back into the fights. And that's always a worry. And that's something that you have to worry about here against Jim Miller, obviously. I just can't see how Jim Miller submits Bobby Green. I do think that Jim Miller has phenomenal BJJ, but he's not knocking out Bobby Green. And I'll be very, very surprised if he submits him because, Bobby Green has good jiu-jitsu, good grappling overall. I just think he's going to have a pace advantage against Jim Miller. I think Jim Miller, right? Not a horrible long shot by any means, so I don't hate the call. I respect it. I just think, Jim Miller outside of round 1, he falls off a cliff, and maybe Bobby Green just completely starts to, wear on him and kind of chip away at him. And I think that Bobby Green in a 3-round fight, as long as he gets out of round 1, it's his fight. So I like Bobby Green just for DFS, not my favorite pick.
Miles checking with his hot take of the card, and boy, this is a hot take. He says Bobby Green submits Jim Miller. Yeah, don't see it happening.
I could see it happening. And I could see it happening. Let me pull up my fighter background piece. I strongly recommend you guys going over to Awesemo.com. I've been releasing a ton of content, and I go and I dive into all their fights and all the outcomes for their fights. So let me pull this up. Bobby Green submits his opponents at a 23% time. Jim Miller has only been submitted 6% of the time. So I get it, but he has been submitted. And I feel like Jim Miller kind of has wilted under pressure in some fights, like when the going gets tough and somebody's kind of just outpacing him. I could definitely see Bobby Green getting I got to be careful with my words. I could see Bobby Green getting a decisive victory, but I don't know about a finish.
I got to bring up the Bobby Green stat, right?
What is it?
November the 6th, 2013. Last time Bobby Green's won by finish.
Yeah, see, that's not a bet I would get behind. I don't think that it's a hot take, and that's the reason it's a hot take, but that's why, if you hit on it correctly, I will say that people are underestimating Bobby Green's grappling, 100%. He's very, very talented. So it's Bobby Green for me, and move on. That's it.
Look, I did like what Bobby Green said. He goes, I'm not chasing championships. I'm chasing the paydays.
Yeah.
He's just being honest with you. So, but yeah, look, I just think there's some decent value there on Jim Miller. I think Bobby Green does have value on FanDuel potentially with takedown defenses in that one. So I think that's something you got to pay attention to. But I think in terms of DFS, I just don't know how much you can have faith in Bobby Green in terms of, getting a 100-point type performance and to be optimal with you there. Next up will be the opening fight of the pay-per-view. That will be Maki Patolo taking on Julian Marquez. Julian Marquez, first fight in 31 months. He's 8,700 on DK. Maki Patolo, 7,500. And of course, it's coconut bombs, as someone already saying I'm going to be excited to talk about this one because these boys be throwing them bungalows. I was thinking about this earlier. I think on the outside looking in, you definitely can see that. But I do wonder if Julian Marquez is going to potentially go the takedown route at some point to try to mix it up here a little bit. And when I talked to Julian Marquez, I thought one of the more interesting things that he mentioned to me is talking about, he did his camp all at Glory MMA and Fitness there in Missouri under leadership of James Krause. Was not at Extreme Couture in Vegas where he had previously done some training at. And he talked about how basically James Krause is like, look, bro, you do not have to throw every punch at 1,000%.
Yeah.
Take a little bit off it. Because he was talking about his back injury. And basically there were doctors who told him his career was over.
Yeah.
He ended up going to a surgeon that was a baseball guy to help him, and because they were talking about how much of your torque in your punches actually comes from your lower back. And this is a fight that, and I told you this earlier this week, I think in terms of GPPs, this is a fight I think you have to have the winner of this fight.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think it's a nice spot for lineups. I do think that Marquez, it's crazy to think that he's in the same weight class as Maki Patolo because, I don't know, it's like I just think that he's such a big guy for the division. I feel like he's a massive man, and automatically after looking at him, I feel like he's a light heavyweight. But he makes 185 pounds. He's stands at 6'2". He's a big boy. But Maki Patolo is a game opponent, and we've seen Maki Patolo at 185 pounds in the past. I think he feels more comfortable there. He might still be a little undersized, but Marquez at Glory MMA, I think is a great move. We talk about our love for James Krause all the time. I love his coaching style. And I think that a lot of people will only view James Krause as the striker, but not the mind and not the cage grappler. I think the cage grappling and the wall work is something that is going overlooked completely because James Krause has an entire system of wall work. He has chaining takedowns. He has a system of takedowns, of how to defend takedowns against the wall or against the cage. And I think that a big guy, and Julian Marquez can start to, utilize that, whether it's defensively or offensively. That the power's there, the striking's there. He has a notable win over Phil Hawes. You saw that on the Contender Series, and you think of what Phil Hawes has kind of turned into. he's an incredible fighter. So, it's a huge win, and it aged really well. But I do think that having a great mind in James Krause is awesome. It makes me like Marquez despite him coming off of such a long layoff. I've been there with long layoffs, and, Marquez just wants to get back in there. I hope that he's not too eager and tries to go out there and just let it fly in round one. And he takes his time and, has a consistent pace with the James Krause pace. And if he does that, he should win this fight handily. I definitely will have Maki Patolo as well in plenty of lineups because he has excellent volume, excellent power for the division. You look at Marquez's finishing rate, 100%. Patolo's finish rate, 77%. So, like you said, I love the fight. I'm targeting it a bunch. I am favoring Marquez. I think that having James Krause be a part of the entire camp and the corner is going to pay dividends, and I think it's going to be a Marquez victory.
So we're 80%-ish shares in terms of this fight?
Yeah, I mean, I want to go 80 because I do think that, there's a big question mark surrounding the layoff and the injury. How healthy is he? I know that he's saying he's healthy. I would probably go like a 60-40. So I am leaning Marquez, but I do think it's a close fight. Patolo is not a bad dog at all. I think at 7,500, you could do worse.
I like the ownership on Julian Marquez. Just peeked at what our ownership was there. Ooh, I like that number. Of course, you got to sign up for MMA Weekly Pass or a full Awesemo Plus Weekly Pass to get access to that one. I'll just say, ooh, I like those numbers over there. I like those numbers I'm seeing on Julian Marquez. Of course, be sure to follow Awesemo on Twitter, which is at Awesemo_com, as we are approaching 30,000 followers on Twitter. And we are going to give away 30 free weekly pass to our followers. So head over right now, Awesemo_com, and give us a follow. Let's move on to the next matchup, Pete. And that'll be Vieira versus Hernandez. Vieira, 9,300, 6,900 for Hernandez. What's your thoughts on potential deficiencies with Vieira?
Yeah, so it's clear. Amazing jiu-jitsu practitioner. Not so great striking. And, he's a liability on the feet. So you worry about him moving forward, facing, the upper echelon of strikers. But I don't know if Anthony Hernandez is the guy that can kind of take advantage of a situation like this. I think that Hernandez, he's a well-rounded fighter, but it's like a low, he's low level in all areas. So like he's okay everywhere. Like predominantly he likes to go the grappling route and has some tricky submissions up his sleeve. But attempting to do that against Rodolfo Vieira is just a recipe for a disaster. You don't want to go there. You don't want him to grab a hold of you. You need to just keep it in the middle and look to strike. So I do think that Hernandez has a clear path to victory. It's just don't let Vieira touch you. So like that's like the only path to victory. So yeah, and in a small cage, I think that's very difficult to do. I think that Vieira is priced, appropriately, 9,300. His finishing rate sits at 100%. He's 7-0. The guy is possibly, top 3 jiu-jitsu practitioners in all of MMA. And I'm so fascinated with his game. It's just 2 deficiencies: striking, absolutely, whether it's offensively or defensively. And then, the middling wrestling, like the wrestling, training takedowns together is okay. It could definitely get better. But I'm sure that he's worked on something. I don't think that he's just completely ignoring, his deficiencies for training camp.
Yeah, it's the $9,300 price tag, $23 over on FanDuel.
Yeah. I mean, I still think that it's a good spot. I mean, if you look at Hernandez's career, right? He had some success on the regional scene, but coming into the UFC, not so much. I mean, he was submitted against Marcus Perez in the second round. Marcus Perez isn't a bad jiu-jitsu practitioner, but he's not Rodolfo Vieira. So that does not give me confidence that Hernandez can avoid the submission. I mean, you're talking about a guy that's levels above both of them. So I think that Vieira, he's in a really good spot to get a quick victory. But obviously, if he can't get the fight to the ground, the likelihood of him winning, it gets slimmer and slimmer by the minutes.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at Anthony Hernandez, he has shown the ability to take the fight to the ground. He had a fight with 6 takedowns. I was just kind of thinking as you were talking look, you've talked about this before, jiu-jitsu guys necessarily don't have great takedowns.
Mm-hmm.
So could Anthony Hernandez over on FanDuel at $9 be a punt play in cash.
Yeah, 100%. It definitely could be. He could definitely be a punt play. It's crazy to see a guy have so much success regionally, then come into the UFC and just look completely just outclassed. And I mean, there are levels. You do see that sometimes, but coming from a good promotion in LFA, you tend to have high expectations for fighters coming out of that. That's like a top regional organization. So, being a champ in LFA means something. So $9, you could do worse. The likelihood of him winning is really, 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 really small. But this is MMA. Anything can happen. I'll probably throw Hernandez in one lineup just for fun, but I will get to plenty of Vieira at 9,300.
Let's move on. Next up, we got Belal Muhammad taking on Diego Lima. Belal Muhammad, one of the biggest favorites on the card, 9,200, 7,000 for Diego Lima, $22 and $8 respectively over on FanDuel. Break this one down for us, Pete.
Yeah, so Belal Muhammad, a guy that just is so consistent in the division. He's so good, 8-3 in the UFC. Fighting, Diego Lima, who is okay everywhere. Definitely not his brother by any means. And I feel bad because I like Lima a lot. And I know everybody says the same thing. He's not his brother. He's not his brother. I feel bad because there's always, like, when you have brothers fighting, who's the better of the two? So he's the lesser Lima. But, he has shown the ability to get some big wins. You think about him knocking out Chad Laprise on The Ultimate Fighter. I really like the guy, so I'm always rooting for him. I do think that he has a lot of skills. He just doesn't really put it together that well under the lights. On a streak right now, so I understand why the UFC is matching these guys. I think it's kind of like, well, let's really see if Diego Lima is going to go. What's he going to go? 4 wins in a row, which would be absolutely insane. Getting a win over Belal Muhammad, who brings great pace, good boxing, but relentless takedowns. That's really how he solidifies rounds and gets wins. I don't see how Lima can really keep it on the feet. If he keeps it on the feet, he's shown the ability to knock people out. So there's always a chance. There's always a puncher's chance. But Belal Muhammad here at 9,200 hasn't been the best DFS guy, usually. But now that you got control time and you think about numbers of takedowns and about a guy that's really struggled against strong wrestlers, maybe Muhammad's an overlooked guy at 9,200. And I'll take advantage of some people maybe not, punching him in their lineups in just hopes that maybe he can get a finish. That Muhammad really can't get too many finishes in his career. If you look at it, 17-3 overall, 29% finish rate. Not the best rates, but guess what? Rates change, records are broken, things happen. Diego Lima could wilt under the pressure and, Muhammad could get a TKO. But I still think that a control-based fight does favor Muhammad and should give him a reasonable score.
Appreciate everyone who's hitting here on a Thursday night watching the show live. Of course, be sure to hit that thumbs up button. That does help us out a lot. Of course, also be sure to subscribe to Awesemo right here on YouTube. Hit that notification bell so you know when a new show is live on the channel. Pete, I got an idea for you. I really feel like as these evolution of Pete the Heat articles come, are we going to get an article armbarred from guard at some point?
If we were going to get an article talking about arm bars from guard, then this matchup we're about to get to between Mallory Martin and Poliana Viana would be the headliner right there, because that is, I'm glad you brought it up. And I think that this fight would definitely be a talking point for that article.
Yeah, I'm just teeing you up here, Pete. That's all I'm doing. I'm just teeing you up right here.
I'm excited for this fight. It's a tricky fight. I mean, I'm not really fond of either one of these fighters as far as their promise in the division. I think that a lot of people like what they see from Mallory Martin, and I'm not one of those people. Like, she's okay. She has what seems to be good wrestling, a good top game. Her striking's a little underwhelming. You think about what Hannah Cifers did in that bout, clipping her. And Hannah Cifers is so tough, and people always talk about how tough she is, and that she is better than her record to a point. Because while she's standing up, she'll give you a tough fight. It's just putting her where she's vulnerable on the mat. So standing up, she definitely took advantage of that and cracked Martin. And Martin was in a load of trouble, was probably looking at a defeat there. So she's lucky that in the next round, the following round, She came out and said, guess what? I got to take you to the mat. I got to execute some top pressure and then start to work towards a finish. And she did. So I like how she's game and didn't quit when the going got tough. I will say that Polyana Viana is probably the better striker of the two. She mixes in some kicks, so she has like more of a Muay Thai background, where Mallory Martin relies more on her hands. This is a low-level fight, guys. It really is a low-level fight. Boy, Viana, in 11 victories, has 100% finish rate. So you could do worse than a punt play at 7,600 with a girl who has supposedly a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So the submission is always there. I can just foresee Mallory Martin doing enough on the feet, being the stronger, more physical of the two in the clinch, and getting some takedowns and maintaining some top pressure. You know, it's not a spot that I love. It's not a fight that I love. I'll have some exposure to Viana, but my pick would be Martin, just getting takedowns and solidifying control to win rounds.
I guess with that thought of the takedowns, though, because of kind of this DraftKings scoring system, because I will tell you, I see a lot of decisions on Saturday night.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be a long night, man. And sometimes these cards that you think are going to be decision cards end up popping and they end up being amazing. But, I mean, we have a lot of notorious fighters that go the distance. I mean, you got Bobby Green, Bilal Muhammad, you know what I mean? So we'll see. Yeah, Kamaru Usman, you know what I mean? Like, things can change, but I think the optimal lineup won't be as nearly high as it has been.
Yeah. Move on. Next up, we got a matchup between Andre Ewell and Chris Gutierrez. 7,800 for Andre Ewell, 8,400 for Chris Gutierrez. Over on FanDuel, interesting salary difference here. 17 for Gutierrez, $12 for Andre Ewell. This is a fight that's essentially been a year in the making between these two guys. Now, Andre, of course, was supposed to fight last weekend, but there was an issue with his COVID test, so he was pulled from that card. So now he's in the spot against Chris Gutierrez. So about February of last year, Chris Gutierrez is like, I want to fight Andre Ewell because he had just fought his teammate in Jonathan Martinez. Very close, what some people would call controversial decision between those two. But the stat that in terms of this fight, and I know Pete, you have there in your heat sheet, is there is a major reach advantage in this one for Andre Ewell.
Yeah, I have been struggling with this fight, and I'm always honest about which fights I'm having a difficult time breaking down. Now, Andre Ewell has an 8-inch reach advantage, like you were speaking of, and in addition to having an 8-inch reach advantage, he is a southpaw. So you hear me say it all the time: when guys are lefties, things are tricky. Things are tricky, and especially when they're a long lefty. And Andre Ewell fits that bill, and you have a predominantly a boxer in Andre Ewell fighting Chris Gutierrez in a kickboxer. He likes to throw a ton of kicks. His hands, he hasn't really shown off too much. He will mix them in and feint and fake in order to set up his kicks. But he's predominantly a kicker. So you got a puncher against a kicker. Now, I think that the range and the distance of Andre Ewell could definitely pose some problems for Gutierrez here. I've been going back and forth, Jason, so I'm going to have exposure to both sides, and I could see a path to victory for both of these. I could see Andre Ewell's volume and his length being an issue for Chris Gutierrez, because when you're a kicker and you're not setting up your kicks a lot with hands, you're throwing naked kicks. So you're throwing the kicks, you're going to be susceptible to shots, long shots straight down the middle. And I think that Andre Ewell's length, and he does time a nice straight left hand down the middle. He did catch Rivera quite a bit with that. Obviously, you always have to think of the stances. So you have a lefty against a righty. Chris Gutierrez switches stances a lot, so he will be throwing that low left calf kick now, because he will, mimic that southpaw stance. But in doing so, I just think that he could get beat to the kick, where he could just get, hit with a couple shots, and he could have his rhythm disrupted by Andre Ewell. Now, in saying that, I can kind of be devil's advocate and talk about the other side. Chris Gutierrez, whenever you're facing a boxer, they're really heavy on their front leg. So you want to beat up that front leg. So, I mean, it's all about who implements their game plan that night. I'm going to have exposure to both sides just because I really can't decide, but I am targeting Ewell a little bit more. I think that a lot of people might be high on Gutierrez, and I'm okay with 7,800 Andre Ewell.
I am as well in this spot. Miles mentioned, he goes, well, the fact that Ewell had already been preparing for a fight be a factor in this one at all. I guess there's twofold to this. Andre Ewell is preparing for a much different fighter in Cody Stamann than what Chris Gutierrez is. Also, Chris Gutierrez was one of the main training partners for Colin Anglin when he was scheduled to fight the previous week, which of course is the fight that Eustace Law came in. So Gutierrez has been in there, and look at in this day and age, all these, especially US based fighters, when it's the Las Vegas card, these opportunities can come along at any moment.
Yeah, I think that they're both going to be well prepared. I think that it's a really close fight and it's a tough fight to call. And that's why I'm struggling. I just do think that the volume, the length of Andre Ewell can cause some problems for Gutierrez. And Gutierrez's shot is to throw tons of kicks, and hopefully they accumulate and end up wearing down Andre Ewell, because you can only take so many of those kicks, But I don't know. We'll have to see. I can't wait for the fight. I'm actually excited for that fight. Third most on the entire card.
Wow. Of course, this is the MMA DFS strategy show. We got about 10 minutes here left in the show. Of course, if you ever do miss our show, it is a part of the Awesemo Podcast Network. Just go to awesemo.com/podcast to check out all the latest podcasts that we do have, and leave a 5-star review on one of our podcast channels for a chance to win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. Good luck in that one. We got 3 more fights. We'll kind of do a little rapid fire on this one. Ricky Simón versus Brian Kelleher. This is another one I was kind of surprised to see what the betting odds were in this one. Ricky Simón -245, Brian Kelleher +205. I think Brian Kelleher is not a bad dog in this opportunity.
Yeah, I think that there's a ton of underdogs that are in great spots. It's just, can they come through? Because I definitely think that there are a ton of underdogs that have a shot. You talk about Ricky Simón, who might be one of my favorite wrestlers in the entire UFC. I just love his entire game, his relentless pressure. Boxes enough, throws enough punches to get you thinking about striking defense, and then starts to implement good takedowns. I liked what he did in his previous fight against Gaetano Perella, where he went in there and just completely went back to his roots of grappling. Guess what? That's what brought me to the dance, and I'm going to keep doing it. So I like what I see from Ricky Simón. Now, in saying that, Brian Kelleher is he's a good wrestler as well, not nearly on the caliber of Ricky Simón, and he depends more on guillotine chokes and power punches to get his victories. You think about Kelleher has the advantage in the finishing department, 82% finish rate, whereas Ricky Simón has a 47% finish rate. You have to have some of Kelleher because of that guillotine being live and what Ricky Simón's game plan is. But for me, I think 9,100 for Ricky Simón, I think it's fair. I think that he's just going to completely ragdoll Brian Kelleher. I'll have some Kelleher, but it's Ricky Simón at 9,100. I like the price tag.
Yeah, Miles had asked about can Ricky Simón avoid the guillotine?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, he's a powerful guy, right? So whenever you're a powerful guy, if you can really launch your opponent to the side instead of up, this is where you've seen Ricky Simón lift his opponent straight up and then kind of just Matt Hughes him a little bit. Well, I want to see Ricky Simón really swing the legs to really avoid that guillotine so he can land cross sides where he's out of danger.
Next up, we got Gabe Green versus Phil Rowe, your favorite matchup, 8,200, 8,000. Phil Rowe is the 8,200 side of this one. A little different on the salary over FanDuel, where Gabe Green's $16, Phil Rowe is $14.
Yeah, man, I hate this fight for DFS. The reason I hate it is because it's so difficult, because you're having a small sample size. You don't really know what to bank on here. You had Gabe Green taking a fight on 2, 3, 4 days notice. And he ended up looking really good and really game, and was able to not get knocked out. And he was hit with everything but the kitchen sink. And it was really impressive to see his durability and toughness in that fight against Daniel Rodriguez. I thought that was pretty, it surprised me. I thought that Rodriguez was going to get rid of him quickly because, Gabe Green has been knocked out in the past. So has Rowe. But Gabe Green, he just kept going forward. He kept going forward. And it's almost like, like a Darren Elkins. We talk about it. The guy that just won't go away. And the guy that won't just go away now has a full camp and is fighting a guy who has a victory on the Contender Series, who had to overcome some adversity. Phil Rowe in the first round against Shabazian's brother was going in there and was starting to get beat to the punch and lit up on the feet, dropped, nearly finished at a point, and then comes back second round, has an amazing round. Third round, ends up working towards a finish. When Phil Rowe got pissed off and he decided to throw punches because he was angry about how the first round went, he looked phenomenal. Like his punches were so straight and so long that, with a 7-inch reach advantage over Gabe Green, he can pose some problems here. I just don't know if he's going to have that urgency. If he goes out there like a sitting duck like he did in the first round against Shabazian, can he get hit with a big shot by Gabe Green? Absolutely. This is a fight I will probably have almost all exposure to because both these guys have 100% finish rates and, priced at 8,200, 8,000. I'm siding with Rowe with his 7-inch reach advantage. I think that he can pose some problems and, even in a decision, work towards a nice score here.
Phil Rowe, by the way, one of the bigger betting line movements. He opened up at minus 130. He's now plus 120. So the betting public does like Gabe Green. Now, our opening matchup of the night will be Robertson versus Maverick. Maverick's a fighter that a lot of people are high on here, but if this fight, look, if Jillian Robertson can win the fight, it means she got to the fight to the ground and she wins via submission.
Yeah, it's another spot where the underdog is in a great, has an opportunity, has a path to victory. Can they just seize that opportunity? It's almost like a bunch of underdogs can tease you, and a lot of underdogs can look really appealing, but can they come through? I don't know if Jillian Robertson can. I do think that Miranda Maverick is pretty talented. We saw she had a great debut, really displayed some excellent Muay Thai, good punches, good kick, good elbows. Really, the elbows are what separates her from a lot of people in that division. Jillian Robertson on the feet does not like to get hit. She does not handle pressure well. She does not handle getting hit. But guess what? More often than not, she's taking her opponents down where she doesn't have to worry about getting hit. So that is the question here, Jason. You pose that question, can she get her opponent to the mat? I think she can one time, at least one time. I think that Miranda Maverick is the more physical of the two. And I think that as long as she gets up to her feet, she seems like the hungrier fighter. I like what I'm seeing out of Maverick here. At 8,500, I'll have my shares. And Robertson at 7,700, I don't think is a bad play based on her path to victory on the mat. It's just outside of that, sometimes she'll get put on her back and she's comfortable there. You think about what happened in the Tyler Santos fight, and there wasn't too much urgency. I like what I see out of Maverick. Granted, it's one fight. She has 6 victories and 3 defeats in UFC. So you have to take that experience, into consideration. But I do think that the hype is real around Miranda Maverick.
Let's get a little rapid fire question here from Samuel. Appreciate you in the super chat. He's got his usual questions: top 2 cash, top 2 GPP, who can break the slate, pivot for the main card fight, top 2 underdogs, who's got the best inside the distance, which champions. So we'll do kind of rapid fire. GPP, Kamaru Usman's definitely one of my 2.
Yeah, I think Kamaru Usman, GPP or cash. I think that 9,000, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, and I would sit there and I think that fire that could break the slate. I kind of like what you said a little bit earlier. Bilal Muhammad, he could be the guy.
Yeah, I think Muhammad is a guy that's going to be overlooked here. I like him here at 9,200.
Top underdogs for me, I'm looking at Macy Barber would be probably my number 1. Number 2, I would probably, I know you don't like it, but I'll say Jim Miller.
Okay, yeah. I think Macy Barber for me, 7,900. And give me Andre Ewell here at 7,800 if he can keep the fight on the feet, avoid the kicks, and out-volume Gutierrez.
We mentioned we think this could be a lot of fights to go to decision. Who's got the best chance to win inside the distance?
Inside the distance, huh? Gosh, there's nobody that sticks out, huh? My goodness. I would say that Marquez Patolo is one I think is going to be a finish. I think Marquez Patolo for sure.
Yeah. So, of course, we'll be back here on Saturday, live before lock, 4:30 p.m. Eastern time. That is going to do it for the MMA Strategy Show. Coming up next right here on Awesemo.com, it'll be the NBA late slate live before lock. So keep it here all night long here at Awesemo.com, and we will see you on Saturday.